that water. Go ahead, please. And again, just trying to understand the imprint of where our houses are. On average, as Bernie was saying, the area of impervious, which would be rooftop, sidewalk, driveway, garage. Being able to understand that is very important in, you can advance it, in understanding how do we reduce that. So really the best way, I think this is a different slideshow. Keep going. So for my city block where I live, I can illustrate, you can just keep advancing through it. The size of my lot is about, I've got about 9,000 square feet, but of that, only the house and the impervious area, you can go through it. I don't think this is the same program. Keep going. So this is the back of my lot where eventually I put a rain garden. And the rain garden I put in is right in here. And you can see that I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 different eaves that are drain gutters that eventually would go down into this side. And pretty much the whole backyard will keep that water. And so for the rain credit or the rain garden policy, I would need to make sure that I take those pictures, illustrate where those are, and then would be able to show that on that overview of where those downspouts are. You can go back where you were to the pretty picture here. Oh, okay. So here's that roof line, and that picture was kind of taken from the northeast looking this way. And so those downspouts that I showed you were here, here, there. And so basically I'm getting about half of my roof that goes, kind of on a southeast-northwest trajectory that goes to that backyard of mine. This is the rain garden after I've put your calculations, and you got to divide it by 12. If you're 8 inches deep, you'd divide 8 inches by 12, and then you'd have a percent or a fraction, and then that would reduce that size of your rain garden. So ultimately, my rain garden is 99 cubic feet. The credit policy says 40% credit for anything that's between 92 and 138 cubic feet, so I would get a 40% credit. Now I notice, and I haven't calculated this in there, I've got a 90-gallon bulk tank that I also use. That's right below a rain spout or a downspout, and then I've got a hose that you can't really see it, but that's on that drain bin that goes into the rain garden. I've got a mosquito netting over this to keep bugs out, but that's another 90 gallons, so that would probably add into that credit. You can advance it. One thing I would suggest is that when you're trying to figure out this credit policy and trying to figure out a rain garden, I wouldn't try to base your rain garden size on the credit that you're trying to receive. I would base it on what fits in your yard. You don't want to put too much water going into a spot because depending on what's around there, you might have flooding issues. But what we're really hoping is that you're just kind of creative about this. There's certainly different ways to do rain gardens. This one down here, they were challenged by a series of elevation changes, and so they made sort of a series of steps of rain gardens. Rain gardens can have a very formal look. They can have a very informal look, just really depending on the person that's creating them. Next. So how do you calculate the drainage area when you're trying to figure out, and this is all, again, contained in this manual. But what we're trying to do is figure, okay, we want to put a rain garden over here. This is our roof. How big of a rain garden do we need to know to put in? And that's based on the size of the area that you're draining. And this is on a map view. If this is at an angle, it doesn't really matter. If your roof's at an angle, you just want to see the total square footage of that area. And so in this example, if we had a although this isn't to scale, a 20-foot by 100-foot house, then this would be my length times the width of the entire house would be 2,000 square feet. You can advance the slide. Because this rain gutter here would be draining a quarter of that roof, there would be about 500 square feet of drainage area that I would need to calculate a rain garden size for. So I want to figure out how big of a rain garden to drain that 500 square foot area. The biggest and one of the most important things about figuring depth and making sure you have a well-sized rain garden is how it fits with the type of soils that you have. If you've got a sandy soil, you can infiltrate at 2.5 inches an hour, and essentially you won't notice that there's much ponding in that rain garden except during a rain event. If you've got a silty soil or a clay soil, that drops by considerable, by about 80% or so, is the amount of water it can infiltrate. So that's going to get where you have more ponding, and it's going to stay there longer. So when you have silty soils or clay soils, what essentially that says is you need to go bigger. And so you have more square footage to absorb that water. You can change it. There's certainly ways that you can test what types of soils that you have. Let me talk about depths. We typically say that we don't want a rain garden to go much deeper than 8 inches, and often that's more of a consideration of how do you make that change from the yard to the rain garden if it's greater than 8 inches. In the examples that I showed on mine, I've used limestone rock to kind of make that transition between the high spot and the low spot. You can certainly do that, and I think the big concern, though, is that you go too much deeper and you're really creating almost like a pond, and if you're then directing water towards that, that could, on a rather quick basis, fill up very quickly. And so if it's deeper than 8 inches, does that become an issue? I don't know. In this example, they have a silty soil, and they want to go 6 to 7 inches deep. And so this 0.25 is this sort of number that helps to calculate then that area of your drained rooftop, which would be the 500 square feet, times this multiplier of 0.25 for this depth and type of sediment they're in. And it says that then 500 square feet by 0.25 would be 125 square feet. That would be the size of the rain garden you would need in a silt or a silty sediment that's 6 to 7 inches deep. Yeah, this is all in. And again, what I would typically will say is, depending on how deep you go, it's anywhere from 10 to 20% of the surface area of the area that you're draining. You can advance it, please. Oh, yeah. Okay, so sample 2, if they had a very clay soil, like we might see in some of the coulees, they might be challenged by not going as deep, and because the multiplier is a lot bigger, they would need a lot bigger rain garden to handle that same amount of 500 square feet of water. And again, these numbers change because with this tight soil, you want it to be bigger rather than smaller. Otherwise, you'll really have a problem with either flooding or whatnot.
So your clay is bigger surface area, shallow, and sand can be smaller and deeper. Both of these examples, you're going to get about the same volumes. You're going to have about the same credit.
Right.